This is comes from a quote that I picked up back when I was injured. And it basically says that we want to turn our injuries into opportunities, right? So anytime we're injured, there was a reason we were injured. And if we can clean up that reason, then not only are we less likely to get injured later, but we're also likely to level up our performance as well. So this is something I always try and keep in mind when I'm hurt or when someone else is hurt. Don't look at it as a bad thing. Injuries aren't fun, but this is an opportunity to identify why you were hurt and get better. Okay, does anyone know what regional interdependence is? No? Cool, all right. So what you'll find with me, this has stuck with me for years, an Adams State guy, true and true, I bleed green. So in general, green is good. And when I was here, Western was the rival. They were red. Red is bad. Sorry if your colors are red. So in general, if you see any of these schematics and it's red, I'm probably not a fan of what's going on there. General idea here though. Let's start at the bottom. Our feet in general are gonna move too much because they're making up for some ankles that aren't moving enough, okay? Our knees are sandwiched between ankles that don't move enough and hips that don't move enough, so they get picked on and do more than they should as well. Our low back is sandwiched between hips that don't move well enough and a thoracic spine, or ribs that don't move well enough, so we tend to injure that low back. Same thing up at the neck, because the shoulders and those thoracic spine and the ribs don't move enough, we pick on that neck. And if you notice, most of our overuse injuries happen in these green areas, not in the red areas. And the analogy I give most of the time is if there's that age-old joke, if you drive past a construction site and there's typically three guys working, or three guys supervising and one guy working, and the guy that's going to complain is the guy that's doing his job, right? So half the time when I'm treating injuries, I'm not treating the area that the pain is at, because it's this guy and this guy's fault because they're not doing their job, right? So that's something to think about when you have an injury. Like, we're not always looking right at the injury. We gotta treat that as far as pain and stuff like that, but we gotta fix the areas around it that are causing that one to work too hard. That makes sense from a regional interdependence standpoint. Big fancy word for just saying, know what your neighbor's doing, because it might be affecting you. Okay, so I tried to simplify the talk a little bit this year. Last year we got into some really complex stuff. This year we're gonna make it simple. If we can get the feet and ankle area, the hips and the core to work, we're gonna get 99% of the problems taken care of, okay? So feet, simple fact, feet, they're the first thing that hits the ground. So if there's something going on wrong there, we're in trouble from the get-go. There was a cool study that looked at Russians that they love plyometrics, right? And so one of the things they said is if you can't stand up on something 8 feet tall and jump down to the ground, we're not doing plyometrics first. Why? Because your brain knows it's not gonna let you jump any higher than you can safely land, right? So they said, well, I don't know anyone that can jump 8 feet. If you can do this, we're good to do plyometrics. So conversely, if we have a weak foot and we go to slam it in the ground to run, our body's actually gonna temper how hard we can put into the ground, because it's gonna go, I don't wanna hurt that. Life example that I have here, on my second and third stress fractures in college, I was a steeplechaser. I was either blessed or cursed with the fact that my stress fractures didn't hurt, so it was usually a different symptom that came up. And so anytime I jump off of the water pit to land, my leg would literally collapse. And what it was doing is protecting that bone that couldn't take the stress, right? So it just said, I'm gonna cut power, I'm gonna let you kind of stumble out of there. And that's how we knew I had a stress fracture that was confirmed with a MRI later. Actually, I had two, I had one in each leg. So we wanna increase the foot strength so we can increase the shock absorption and increase the force production there. Hips are in the middle of everything. They're your biggest force producer. If they're not in the right position, they can't produce the force, they're gonna start cheating. and that's not good for injury. It's not good for performance. It's not good for any of those things on that continuum. So we want to make sure those hips are in the right spot. Core, my definition of core may be a little different than others. I'm not a fan of a six-pack, and it's not just because I don't have one anymore. It's because your rectus abdominis, that six-pack, is actually attached really narrow to the sternum and really narrow to the pelvis, and so it actually messes things up. So anytime I see someone with an overdeveloped rectus abdominis, I start worrying as to whether they're controlling their ribs and their pelvis. So I prefer the internal obliques and the hamstrings to control our pelvis and rib connection. Your diaphragm to be your primary breather, your psoas to be your primary hip flexor, and our glutes to be our primary hip extender. If we can nail that, we've got a good system there as far as running and some other things we'll talk about a little bit later. So, okay. How many, before we go here, how many of you have had a running injury? Just as a, okay, yeah, that fits about the, I say about 80% of runners will have a running injury. How many of you guys currently have an injury? Okay. How many of you that are better think you have the solution to, if it comes back, you can fix it right away? Okay, cool. Cool. How many of you on the other side, if it comes back, you have no idea why it went away and you just hope it goes away on its own? Okay, all right. I've been in all those spots, so I'm with you. All right, so let's talk ankle mobility at the moment. So ignore the picture on your guys' right, my left. If your ankle won't dorsiflex forward, right? That would probably be the majority of you guys. Runners are notorious for having bad ankles. Then where are you gonna get that range of motion? We're gonna probably get it into our foot, right? We're gonna flex through that foot. Or we might change our gait, stick our foot out to the side and roll the inside of the foot. We may go further up the chain and get it through the knee, get a little hyperextension there as we go through. So all these things can increase the likelihood of plantar fasciitis, posterior tib syndrome, which I argue a lot of times is plantar fasciitis in a disguise, ACLs, and then even low back pain. Low back pain, we got to go up a few tiers, but I want you guys to imagine how many of you guys are good at squats? Okay. How many of you, when you squat, you can't bring your knees forward, so you stick your butt back forward and then you squat, bending over like that? Okay. That's how I see most runners squat. And so then we go all the way up the chain and start hurting our backs, right? If we go down to weakness, this is where the pictures come in. So if our foot is weak and it rolls inwards, we'll talk about that like a collapsed arch. Sometimes that's your arch collapsing, sometimes it's just foot rolling in. Now we're gonna go up the chain. This tibia is gonna roll in. This femur is gonna roll in. And your pelvis is gonna roll forward, okay? So now just one weakness in this chain has caused a problem all the way up the chain. Now, like we talked about the plantar fasciitis stuff happening here. With these two rotations, now we're putting torque on our knee. And then up here, we're putting torque in that low back, okay? Does that make sense how that kind of all can go through there? You don't need me in the picture. I'll let you take a picture of the screen. So again, we're gonna decrease force. If you've ever seen a really efficient runner, when they land, this hip is high, this shoulder's high, and we got a straight line down through the little hip. An inefficient runner, this drops, that knee goes in, and we get some sort of compensation up top, right? You guys have all seen that person? Maybe you are that person. So that can start down here at the bottom, or we'll see it can also start up at the top. Okay, so we'll talk about immobility first. Another area that runners aren't super great at is hip mobility. Most of the time it's in hip extension. We could talk about some of the side-to-side mobility too. But in hip extension, if we don't get hip extension here, we usually get it here. We all have seen that runner that extends, especially as they get tired. That causes problems in a couple spots. One, we lose this glute as our primary hip extender. That's our most powerful muscle. We want to run with this guy, not with our hamstrings, not with our low back, not with our calf. We want our glutes to work, okay? That's where I often will first look if I have someone that has calf or Achilles issues, honestly, because they're probably running down the road with their calves trying to push off. The other piece is up higher. As we extend here, our ribs flare up like this. When we do that, we lose our diaphragm. You guys know what the diaphragm is? Yeah, so our diaphragm is supposed to be anchored and work up and down like a piston, okay? If it's not doing that, we start having to breathe here, or here, or here. None of them are very effective. All of them end up being pretty uncomfortable as you run. So we want to keep that pelvis where it's at so that we can keep running there. Weakness, where I see weakness in the hips is more in the rotational plane. So when we land, this muscle here, if we squeeze it, pushes this femur out, okay? If it's weak, that drops in, and now we've put torque on the knee again, put torque on that foot. It's another thing where, like, if I'm looking at plantar fasciitis, posterior tib, we're looking up here at the hip. Hip's the big brother. It's got to do most of the work. The little muscles of the foot and the shin probably shouldn't be responsible for all of it. Okay, here's the core, as I would define it. Some people wouldn't include all those muscles there. So this is your transverse abdominis. Goes all the way around you like a corset, like a weightlifting belt. This is your internal obliques. They connect those ribs to the pelvis. You can't see where it goes here. This is your psoas. It actually attaches up there. That's your hip flexor. Hamstrings, obviously. Glutes. That's what I would put together as your majority of your core. This is actually your diaphragm here. I would include that into the core as well. So big thing for me is if we don't have control of that core, we get this. These ribs coming forward, that pelvis coming forward, and then we lose the lungs, we lose the glutes. And I'm sure some of you today felt what happens when you lose your lungs out there running up and down the hills, right? So, all right.